He goes, okay, now let's just everyone have thoughts. Just put your thoughts out there. Put your thoughts. I'm thinking I got to get up early tomorrow morning because I looked at my watch, and I swear there was a boom and a huge puff of smoke and a beautiful vanilla white and gold V UFO. It just shot out of nowhere, out of a portal in the sky. I swear to God, out of a hole in the sky. It just shot right above us, floating over us. Underneath it, it had octopus suction pods that were pulsating.
Wow.
Three, it was a V, so 3 and 3. And they were translucent, lit up, and they looked like heartbeats. They were like boom, 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 boom. And I saw it clear as I'm looking at you. And I said to myself, whatever that thing is, it's alive. Clearly, these major scientists and doctors, they're not going to throw their careers away to say Jaime Maussan has fake. They're not fake. I mean, and Michael Mazzolo, when he hired me, he goes, Dan, I swear to God on my mother's life, these are not fake. When he said that to me, I said, Michael, I trust you and I believe you. Lou Elizondo, if you Google him in imminent, his lawyer called me yesterday, literally. Lou Elizondo's lawyer literally called me yesterday. He goes, Dan, I would love for Lou to come to LA and talk to the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. I said, anytime. I go, let me know. I think that would be awesome. I'd love to make that happen. I said, Lou doesn't have any LA Hollywood, voice, right? And he goes, no, not at all.
Legit. Biologics. That's
Biologics. I always mess that up, man.
The following is a conversation with Dan Harary. This is the second conversation I've had with Dan this year, and it was really good to have a good old catch up. Dan has been a Hollywood publicist for decades, from people like Springsteen to Spielberg, Seinfeld to Meryl Streep, Howard Stern and Hugh Hefner. Dan knows a thing or two about celebrities and the nostalgia of Hollywood as an insider for decades. A renowned Hollywood publicist for over 40 years, as well as the co-founder of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, looking to connect and integrate the UFO UAP subject with filmmakers and bring the subjects to our screens. A fascinating man with a rich history in nostalgia, a subject of film that I absolutely adore. Movies, stardom, and old school PR. A fun and warm character who I always enjoy talking to. So, the following is a conversation with Dan Harary. Yeah, I think it was this year. Yeah, it was the start of this year because it's season 2. It was one of the very first, so I would say January, February.
Okay. So since then, I was the publicist for Contact in the Desert.
Yeah.
And this year was their 10-year anniversary. I had only ever been once before in 2023. I had just befriended Stephen Bassett in 2023, and he made me go. And he introduced me last year, 2023, Contact to everybody. And he and I had just conceived the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance literally 3 or 4 days before Contact. We had lunch in Hollywood. I'm sure I told you this story last time. We had a 3-hour lunch in Hollywood, and we came up with this idea because I've been a Hollywood publicist for 40 plus years. Stephen's been a disclosure advocate in Washington almost 30 years. And we became friends. I was promoting my book after they came. And I met him at UFO Con in San Francisco last March. We became friends. We had a lunch in May. He said, Dan, what can we do together? I literally had a light bulb moment in my life. I've had several of those. I looked at the ceiling and I look at Steve and I go, we're going to create the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. I pulled it out of my, my rear end. I really did. I pulled 3 words out of the universe. And Stephen goes, oh my God, that's exactly right. That's exactly what we're going to do. And we have, and we've done that. So this year, Contact in the Desert, it was the 10th anniversary. I think we had about 2,000 people. Richard Dolan, Nick Pope, Paul Hynek, George Norrie, George Knapp, Jeremy Corbell, Whitley Strieber, Travis Walton. Man, it's like it's like rock and roll camp. It's like the rock and roll stars of
the who's who of ufology. It was incredible.
Yeah, it really is. It's the rock stars of ufology is what I was babbling. So last year I went and met people and was like, oh my God, this is pretty cool. This year and I'm not bragging, really, I'm not bragging, but this year people knew me a lot of people know me because I created the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, and I was the publicist for Contact in the Desert itself. So this year, Nick Pope, Paul Hynek, Richard Dolan, George Norrie, George Knapp, Jeremy Corbyn. Hey, Dan. Hey, Dan. Hey, Dan. How you doing, Dan? Dan. I'm like, wow, these people know me. A year before, I couldn't get arrested. In 2018, no one ever, I never heard of me last year, really. This year, everyone knew me, and I was promoting my book and all that stuff. So I ran the media. We got a lot of press. We had a lot of local TV, a lot of local radio, and I got contacts into the LA Times. That's the big paper, obviously, in LA. It's only we only have one. It's the LA Times. It's the first time they ever covered Contact in the Desert ever. So I'm very proud of that one. So I was running the media room, which was very, very hectic. Alone, that was very hectic. On top of that, I had a booth. We had a booth for the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. And every hour during that weekend, we had a different VIP at the booth. We had movie star Thomas Jane. We had movie star Dee Wallace from E.T. We had Paul Hynek. We had Nick Pope. We had Steve Bassett. We had not George Norrie, but his producer, Tom Danheiser. We had a lot of on the hour. So I'm running the press room. I'm running the HDA booth. And on top of that, I hosted a panel, a 90-minute panel for HDA called Disclosure and Consciousness Across the Media, something like that. And that was packed, man. We had probably had 1,000 people in there.
Wow.
That was a lot of fun. That's the first time I've hosted a panel. And then the last day, I did a 90-minute talk called Why I Believe My Father Was Involved with UFOs for the Military, which I'm sure you and I talked about last time, which is the whole premise behind my book After They Came. So Contact was, I mean, for me personally, I came home, I was exhausted. My daughter saw me, she goes, Dad, are you okay? I go, no. I sat on the chair like for 5 hours on a chair. I couldn't move. It was exhausting.
Yeah, I can imagine. Was it like 4 days, 5 days, like a whole week?
Let me think. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Yeah, it's 5 days. It's most of 5 days.
Yeah.
And I got there the day before it even started. So it was a long week, but I'm very fortunate. It was a lot of fun. In retrospect, it was a lot of fun. I worked my ass off. I literally worked my ass off. Look, I just turned 68. The press room is on the second floor, and all the activities at this huge hotel are either on the first floor or in another building. So when I'm way in the back on the second floor, and anytime I had to go find a Richard Dolan or a Nick Pope for an interview and they weren't there, I had to go down flights of stairs, run through 110-degree heat outside in Palm Springs and find people and bring them all the way. And I told the owners, I said, if you want me next year, man, we got to put the press room on the first floor. I said, I'm not doing that again. There's no way I'm going to do that again. Anyway, I'm just babbling.
Need to get you a golf cart, I think, just to
yeah.
one place
I used to have one of those. I used to work at Columbia Pictures in the 80s in Burbank, and my department, we had the little golf cart thing, and I used to it's true. I used to drive around and see, you see Clint Eastwood and Richard Dreyfuss and Barbra Streisand and Jim Henson. And I became friends that year with Mickey Dolenz from the Monkees, who was my childhood hero. And you're like beep beep, like you have the little thing and you're waving to, Clint Eastwood. I mean, that was cool. That was pretty cool, gotta say.
Yeah, we had two of our sort of team, Dr. Jesmina Garcia, and I think she's a member of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance.
Yes, yes, she is. Yes, she is.
Yeah, she's an awesome human being. But she went there with Dorje Mehta, who I've worked with a lot as well, and they did a show live from Contact, and we did a podcast there, which was good fun. But they loved it. Really, really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it.
Oh, that's great. Do you know? Is she? I'm doing an event on September 22nd in LA. Do you know? I've not heard from her.
I think that she may well be coming because we're in a group chat and I saw that mentioned and I said, I'm going to be talking to Dan today.
Okay.
And Aslan as well. I don't know if you know Aslan, but he was at the press conference for the
yes.
Nazca press conference.
Yes, I did. I met him then. I remember meeting him. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think he's going to be going along as well.
Okay. Well, I'm
wants to get
keeping the
involved.
RSVP list, so they need to tell me they're coming, so I don't throw them out at the door. If
I
you speak
will.
to them again, tell them to RSVP to Dan. Okay.
100%, 100%. I'll get that to you within the next few hours,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. Okay, cool, cool. That's great.
Awesome, awesome. So, well, let's come on to that. So, how did you get involved in Jaime Musson coming to Los Angeles and you know a press conference there? Because that was, I mean, I'd seen some things with him in Mexico, and obviously we saw, we all saw the Mexican Congress, and then him just appearing in LA. It was LA, wasn't it? The press
Yes.
conference. Yeah.
Okay. So again, Stephen Bassett and I created the Hollywood Disclosure Lines we really, we conceived it in June. Really, I mean, we started spreading the word last June. Over the course of last summer and early fall, he told everyone he knew, I told everyone I knew, and we put our colleagues together. Uh, Two of Stephen's colleagues are Serena DC, who's a very successful documentary filmmaker here in LA, and her partner, Michael Mazzola. Michael Mazzola produced Unacknowledged with Stephen Greer, which
Yeah.
everyone saw that one. So Michael and I have become very good friends. So Michael and Serena are partners, and they both joined the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, I think in September. Okay. So I was friends with them. So come around, oh boy, let's see, maybe March. In February, Michael called me in February and said, "Hey, Dan, we're working with Jaime Maussan on the ancient Peruvian mummies project," which I'd heard of. And like everyone else, as you know, man, I said, "Oh, you mean, you mean the fake mummies, the fake bodies?" Michael said, "No, no, Dan, you don't understand. Jaime Maussan in September, I think last year, presented real ancient mummies to the Mexican government. I believe it was September 2023. And they were real. They had once been living, breathing creatures who lived on the earth 1,000 years ago. After that, the Peruvian government created some paper mache fake mummies. They hired an artist. He created fake mummies, and then the Peruvian government trotted those out to their press, and they said, "Here's Jaime's fake mummies. These are fake, fake, fake." Well, what they did was slander. What they did was slander. They don't want the world to know that 1,000 years ago, a race of little 4-foot little creatures, I think they had 3 fingers on each hand, lived in Peru. So Jaime's like, "No, no, no, Peruvian government, you're full of S word. Mine are absolutely real, and I can prove it." So Michael Mazzola and Serena hired me in February, March this year to do a press conference here in Los Angeles with Jaime at a very nice hotel. It was in West Hollywood. And we did a live event in which Jaime said to the world that the place was packed. We probably had 100 people there with press and stuff. He said, "Look, there's been a lot of BS talk about my fake mummies." He goes, "These are not fake. The Peruvian government is trying to defraud me, but mine are real." And then we did a 3-hour presentation with doctors and scientists live on a big screens from Mexico City and somewhere in Peru. I forget the city. And they x-rayed these things live, and they did CAT scans live. And these scientists, now here's the thing, man. I never studied Spanish, right? Like an idiot. I've lived in LA like my whole life. And I studied French in high school because I'm a moron. Not quite literally, I'm a moron. I speak 0 words of Spanish. This whole thing was in Spanish. And I'm like, oh man, I wish I knew how to speak Spanish. So they did hours and hours of medical with bones and tissues and muscular skeletons. They had one of these Peruvian mummies that was pregnant. They showed a fetus, a mummified fetus, right? So anyway, at the end of this, I'm like, okay, these are real. Clearly, clearly, these major scientists and doctors, they're not going to throw their careers away to say Jaime Maussan has fake. They're not fake. I mean, and Michael Mazzola, when he hired me, he goes, "Dan, I swear to God on my mother's life, these are not fake." When he said that to me, I said, "Michael, I trust you and I believe you. Otherwise, I would not have done the press conference."
Yeah.
So these were real. Now, the update to that is Jaime Maussan won $300 million from the Peruvian government. No one's heard about that. And Michael told me that months later. I go, really? I don't know why that's not front page news.
Yeah, it's
But
massive.
but Jaime won a case. I don't know that he'll ever get the money, but he won a fraud case against the Peruvian government. He won. So he proved that they're full of S, and his mummies were the real deal. That was my involvement.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating case. I spoke to Dr. Zalsay, who was one of the original scientists.
I think he was part of our show. Yeah, he was. I think he was one of our people. Yeah.
Yeah, and he told us a story about how he got connected and how his initial intention was just to prove that it was all fake and nonsense. And then he started testing it. It was like, this isn't fake or nonsense. This is real. This, could potentially be the biggest discovery in human history for, God knows how long. If not,
you have to wonder. You have to wonder why that didn't. Why that's not the front page of the New York Times. Okay. Yeah. Now, again, I'm a publicist. I did the press conference. I produced the press conference. We had press there. Not one of the American press people who came, not one ran a story. But the Mexican press that came, right? They all ran the story. And I was very disappointed, It's like, you guys came, you just saw 3 hours of x-rays and CAT scans. If that's BS, that's pretty good special effects. If that's because this is live, right? This is live in laboratories. That's pretty good BS if that's not real. Yeah. And no American press ran anything. So it's really, it goes to like, oh, there's no aliens. Oh, that's BS. There's no aliens. Well, prove it to me. Show me an alien, Dan. Okay, well, I can't show you an alien, but I know they're real because I've been studying this for 20 years. If you study it for 20 years, you'll know that they're real too. If you're friends with Richard Dolan, Nick Pope, and Steve Bassett, and Paul Hynek, then you'll know they're real too. And Kathy Martin and Deborah Caldwell, who was abducted, you'll know. So right, so I'm just babbling, man. I just got my COVID shot, so I'm sorry, I'm babbling. I'm all over the map. I'm sorry, man.
So, I mean, you're an old school publicist. You've been in this game for many, 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 many years. How you must have like some kind of an insight into why it's not getting picked up. Is it purely because of the stigma? Because it's just it's still a silly subject or a sci-fi subject, or is there something more to it? Do you think?
It's 80 years of obfuscation, which I love that word, right? 80 years of obfuscation. I'll give you a perfect example. Last year, we all watched David Grush testify in Congress, right? I think it was 2 or 3 hours. Watched it live. Fascinating, right? Yeah. We have extraterrestrial technology. We have craft. We have non-human. He never said the word alien or ET.
Non-human
he said
biologics. That's
biologics. I always mess that up, man.
Yeah, me too.
We have non-human craft. We have off-world tech. We have non-human biologics, living and dead. That's what he said on live TV. And this guy is not a moron off the street. This is a major Navy intelligence officer for years. Yeah. The fact that he had the balls to do that on live TV before Congress is unbelievable, right? So anyone like myself, and I'm new in this world, but anyone like a Bassett or a Danny Sheehan or George Knapp, people have been working for decades, and they were all in the room, by the way. Stephen was sitting right behind him, Bassett. This is huge, huge, right? And I'm like, wow, this guy did it. He did it. Okay. I live in Los Angeles. I got the LA Times the next day, right? Page 19, a little story. Yeah, there's this Navy intelligence officer. He says extraterrestrials exist. Really? That's not the front page of that's not your front page story. That's not your front page story. Okay. So the answer is the media have been turning their backs for 80 years because whoever runs the deepest, darkest part of either the military or the government, it's the inner group that runs the ET and UFO program. It's not the president. It's not Congress. It's certainly not Congress, and it's certainly not the president. No president. I think since, obviously FDR, Truman, Eisenhower, and I think JFK probably were well aware of it. But after that, I don't think any were. Reagan was. Reagan was absolutely for sure. He made quite a few remarks about aliens. But this is part of our military and our government that American people have 0.0 hand in. This is not up to us. And they have embedded people at the TV networks, at the major newspapers, at the wire services, at the major radio stations, magazines for decades of time. If you follow, if you know the Dr. J. Allen Hynek Project Blue Book story, I'm friends with Paul Hynek. I've read about it, but I know this from Paul firsthand directly. When his father was hired by the Air Force in the late 40s for Project Sign, and then Grudge, and then Blue Book, his role was to debunk, everything. You're a genius scientist. You have a lot of credibility, Dr. Hynek. You go out there, tell people it's swamp gas, it's geese, and it's weather balloons. That's your job. You just did, okay, I'll do that. And he did that for years and years. And then I think it was 1965 is the famous turnaround. It was the Michigan swamp gas story. He went to a town in Michigan. He was there for like a week. And all these townspeople are telling him, Dr. Hynek, man, we saw these craft for days and these bright craft coming and going. And he did a press conference and he said it was swamp gas. Well, Gerald Ford later became president, but he was the representative at the time. He wrote a letter to Congress and he said, hey, there's something going on in our skies. It's not swamp gas, because we all know that's BS. Gerald Ford did that. And that was the turning point for Dr. Hynek. He's like, wait a minute, I don't want to be the shill for the Air Force anymore. I've been lying long enough. This stuff is real. So that's when he turned and he started to know it was real. And he's caught in a weird position. His bosses are the U.S. Air Force, but he wants to tell the world the truth. So he was really stuck in the middle there for quite a few years. Yeah. Blue Book ended at the end of '69. And then he created CUFOS, I believe it was. CUFOS, somewhere in Chicago, I believe it was.
Such a fascinating case. We can see quite clearly that the subject is so popular in, if a news company organization does run a piece, it's massive. And we see that with Congress people that tweet, they'll tweet about some kind of partisan issue, and then they'll tweet about UFOs, and UFOs will have 100,000 views, and the other thing will have like 5,000 views, 2,000 views. Because it's bipartisan, because it covers every political area of the spectrum, and different age group and countries, and every kind of demographic is interested in the subject. And so you would think it sells, it makes money, it's ad revenue, it's clicks. Why don't they jump on it? And that would make sense if we've got people embedded in there that go, we'll leave that one. We'll leave that one for now.
But there's always been an effort to obfuscate, debunk, make. Look, after Grush came forward, right? Oh, David Grush had depression. He's an alcoholic. He yelled at his wife, and he has depression. I don't know if you remember those stories.
Yeah.
They were like, "Oh, he's not a good guy. You're going to believe this guy." Whoever it is, they're going to debunk it. It's ingrained in the DNA of the cabal, I guess, that run. My joke is, I don't know if this is a joke, but I strongly believe in Majestic 12, that existed. Even if it didn't, those papers, I was on the other day with Gene Steinberg, and he goes, Dan, that's been debunked. Those papers aren't real. I said, look, Gene, even if those papers weren't real, tell me Truman didn't create a group of advisors after Roswell. Tell me that didn't happen. Of course it did. It had to. Truman's people called Roswell the next day after their press release. You guys are announcing aliens? Who the hell do you think you are? You're announcing to the world aliens, and you didn't come to me? I'm the president of the United States. I'm the guy that does it, not you, you stupid asses, right? I mean, Walter Hout, the PR guy, and that would have been me. That would have been me because I'm the PR. But imagine the screaming phone call he must have gotten, right? You stupid son of a bitch! How dare you invalidate? Who are you? You're not the president. Who are you? I'm just babbling. Here's something I thought of recently that I think would have changed the world. Ready for this? And I want to pitch this as a movie. When Roswell happened, we all know Roswell really happened. If you study it, and it absolutely happened. There was a crash, one or two. There was a craft. Apparently, I think there was a large craft was hit by lightning, and a part of it just melted over Mac Brazel's farm. It was the debris, and then it was found. I think it's like 30 minutes away. The bigger craft with three or four dead bodies and one living being. That's what happened. Um, when the Roswell Army people recovered all that material, clearly they had to have called, someone had to have called Washington, D.C. to tell them. Think about this, right? If Truman gets the call on day one, Mr. President, we have aliens, we have a UFO, we have aliens. Truman then says, okay, I want those guys to do absolutely nothing, just sit on everything. I'm going to get on a plane. I'm going there. I want to see this for myself, right? He goes, he sees it. He goes, okay, this is huge. What do? I have to tell the world. Just think about this. I have to tell the world. Truman goes on live. I don't know if we had TV then, but certainly we had radio. He goes on live radio. Ladies and gentlemen, I have, as President Truman, I have something incredible to tell you. I'm standing here with a craft from outer space and four dead aliens. Extraterrestrials are real. I'm not telling you to scare you. I'm telling you because it's true and it's real. We'll keep you informed. All you had to do.
Yeah.
All you had to do, day one. All you had to do, day one. There never would have been the truth embargo. We wouldn't need disclosure now. That would have been disclosure on day one.
Yeah.
Right? And all these last 80 years.
It's like Roswell 2.0, isn't it? What could have happened, where we could be. Free
It's
energy.
the alternate, free energy, maybe relationships with different extraterrestrial beings. Maybe instead of people shooting guns at craft or being frightened, they're like, hey, come on, we want to meet you. I did a CE5 recently, and we said we want to meet you, and we saw an incredible UFO. It was a contact in the desert in June. But the worldview on this topic for 80 years would have been entirely different. And oh no, we can't tell, we can't tell, we can't tell. Why? War of the Worlds broadcast 1938. That was 9 years earlier. Scared the ass out of thousands of people in America. Right? People had heart attacks because of a play that Orson Welles did about Martians coming to New Jersey and eating people. People had heart attacks. I've looked into that. So this is 9 years later. Truman remembered the War of the Worlds broadcast. Number one. Number two, this is only 2 years after we dropped 2 atom bombs on Japan. So Truman's going to tell the world, okay, world, we just had a credible war. We just used the atom bomb. By the way, now we have aliens. He's like, I'm not going there, man. We got to keep this quiet. So from day one, Truman and his people, from day one, created the truth embargo. And my joke was that the children, the grandchildren, and the great-grandchildren of the Majestic 12, they were all men. Whoever followed, yes, Daddy, I'll follow the family business. I'll cover up UFOs till I'm 100. And I think maybe they all just got inherited that same position down the line.
Yeah. Great film. Great film.
Wouldn't that be something?
That.
Seriously,
Yeah.
wouldn't that be something? It's a whole alternate universe. Aliens be walking down the street. Hey, Quark Nog, how are you? It's craft are flying around. Who knows? Maybe it would have been dramatically different. I think it would. I think the world would have been different.
Yeah, absolutely.
When Travis Walton gets abducted, Betty and Barney Hill, the guys from Pascagoula, Mississippi, or whatever, those guys, I can't say they were Pascagoula, but all these people that have been abducted. My friend Debbie Jordan Caldwell, she was the star of Bud Hopkins' book Intruders. She was the real life Kathy, I think was the name. She had all kinds of experiences. These people, none of these people were believed.
Mm-hmm.
When Travis Walton came back, people thought it was a hoax.
Yeah.
His townspeople. I'm reading his book right now, Fire in the Sky. I met him recently. He signed it for me. Everyone thought that his brother, his 6 best friends killed him. They thought he was murdered because he was missing for 5 days. He came back. They're like, "Oh, BS. Yeah, you were on a flying saucer. Yeah, sure, Travis, prove it. How do you prove you're flying saucer? The flying saucer's gone. How are you going to prove you're on a flying saucer?" They had no photos, no film, because it came out of nowhere. He was gone for 5 days. The guy lost weight. He had scars and scratches, bleeding. He's dehydrated. He's gone I think he said he lost 10 pounds in 5 days. How do you do that? And that's a hoax. Why would you do that? What was his gain? To make a major motion picture? he cuts trees in Arizona. What does he know about it? Hollywood. He's going to write a book. What was his game? Right? Betty and Barney Hill, interracial couple, super controversial for their time. Why would they want any attention on their lives?
Yeah.
Except
Yeah,
it really
absolutely.
happened. So a lot of things would have
Absolutely.
been different. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it comes on to a really good point. I keep thinking about this with people like David Grush and Elizondo, and people say, well, they're doing it for money and fame. And you think, well, actually, here you've got like war heroes or intel heroes. They've won all kinds of awards, and their credibility is just top notch. Presidential briefings and all sorts of things like that. And then when you start talking about UFOs, oh, you're that UFO guy. Your credibility goes all the way down. Like there's no benefit there. So then you look at, okay, well, maybe they're just doing it to make lots of money. I think, well, that doesn't add up either, because you've got this really high paid, most of them, I think Elizondo and Grush were GS15 level, which was, not far off $200,000. With David Grush, he's quite a young guy, so he's got plenty of years left to top up that pension and the benefits and all those things that go along. And instead, he's going to do what, the podcast scene? I mean, that doesn't make any money,
Right.
Maybe a book, Louis Elizondo waited 7 years before he put his book out, and there's no guarantee it's going to be a bestseller. So it's kind of like, it doesn't add up that it's all for fame and for money, because the fame is just such a weird thing where half of the people that know who you are think that you're fake or think that you're a grifter. And I don't know, it just doesn't add up when I see that, and I hear that from many, many of the sort of debunkers and skeptics.
Yeah, well, that's 100% BS, 100,000% BS. Betty and Barney, they came forward. They didn't come forward. Their psychiatrist told some other people. They told the psychiatrist, don't tell anybody. The psychiatrist, I think, sold their story to a magazine, I think is how that one came out. Travis, of course, everyone thought he was murdered, so he had to go public. Grush, during testimony, Tim Burchett said, Mr. Grush, have you had threats on your life? Yes. Yes, I've had threats. My wife and I have had threats on our lives. He's going to come forward for fame and money. He has threats on his life from the military? No, I don't think so. Have we heard from David Grush since last summer? No. Guy's got to be hiding somewhere. There's no David Grush book. There's no David Grush TV show or movie. This guy's probably. Steve Bassett was in the room, and he's one of my best friends. I saw him Labor Day, the whole day we spent. He goes, Dan, I was in that room. He goes, when David Grush said to Congress, I know where non-human biologics are being stored. I can show that. I could take you there if you bring me into a skiff. Steve Bassett said, everyone in that room looked like, what did he just say? Did he just say that? And Steve told me, he goes, Dan, there's no way he got that approved by the DOD. He didn't get that approved. That was like almost a slip of the tongue.
Yeah.
He must have got such crap from the powers that, David, you idiot, how dare, who the hell do you think you are? You can't announce aliens, you stupid F. We're going to kill you and your wife. We don't hear about Grush. I don't know what happened to the guy. Lou Elizondo has it's not a number one. It never was a number one, but it was in the top 10 the last 2 weeks. Good for him. It took him years. I've not seen the book, but friends of mine have read it. There are pages that are redacted with black marker, which I think, I'm a publicist, so you always look for an angle or a hook or marketing hook to say, yeah, here's my book, and here's what I wanted to tell you, world. And look, the DOD took a black marker and X'd out the pages 25 to 36. I think that's genius. I think that's brilliant.
That's a great move.
So now he will when you have a best-selling book, not that I'll ever know, but he will make money. He will likely at some point become a millionaire. Okay, fine. When he was interviewed recently on TV, Ross Coulthart, News Nation, he and his wife live in a trailer. They had to move into a trailer because of threats, because orbs were floating around their house, scaring him and their daughters. They're living in a trailer. So Lou Elizondo deserves to become a millionaire. He deserves money. Did he do that book for money? No. He did that book because he's compelled to tell the world what he knows. Jay Stratton, this week, 3 days ago, came out and said, I'm writing my book for HarperCollins. It's going to be a tell-all UFO book. So now what's happening is, this is my opinion. People at this level, they see Grush. They see Grush, no fame, no money. Well, fame, of course, not no money, no gain, right? No gain. Grush, zero gain for Grush. Lou goes, I want some gain. I'll do it instead of testifying in Congress. I'll do a book. He's going to make $1 million. Jay Stratton next year, he'll probably make $1 million. These guys they're starting. These top guys, in my opinion, they're starting to bypass Congress. They're going to go right to the public with books. And once you have a book, then you do CBS News and New York Times and CNN and People Magazine, and then you get this incredible press. Lou Elizondo, if you Google him in imminent, his lawyer called me yesterday, literally. Lou Elizondo's lawyer literally called me yesterday. He goes, Dan, I would love for Lou to come to LA and talk to the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. I said, anytime. I go, let me know. I think that would be awesome. I'd love to make that happen. I said, Lou doesn't have any LA Hollywood, voice, right? And he goes, no, not at all. I go, if I can help you and HDA can help you and Lou, absolutely. I go, he's a hero. I wish him well with his book. I'd love to meet him. And anytime he wants to talk to HDA members, tell him I'll create an event and have him come. I know our members would love to meet this guy. So none of these guys are doing it for fame or fortune. They're doing it because they're compelled to share with the world what they know,
Yeah. And that tracks, doesn't it? I mean, it tracks with, if you do the figures, you do the numbers, Lou must have lost, I don't know, 2 million in wages, pension contributions and bonuses since 2017 when he was out. So it just mathematically, it doesn't make sense. Even if he made $1 million from books, well, he's probably net down $1 million from income.
Oh yeah, they had to sell. They had to sell their. Yeah, they sold their house. They had to sell their house.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is not. That's not a gain for these guys. All right. So I'm a publicist. In the last 2 years, I've had quite a few clients in the ufology world who have hired me to be their publicist, authors, documentary filmmakers, TV show producers, right? What do they all have in common? Two things. They want the world to know the truth about ufology. And number two, none of them has $5 in the bank. Okay? None of them. No one in ufology. Here's the exceptions. Eric Von Daniken, Giorgio Tsoukalos, because he created Ancient Aliens, multimillionaire. Nick Pope is very wealthy. He owns the Ancient Aliens tour. Richard Dolan gets high speaker fees, right? George Norrie, obviously, he must make a lot of money, national radio. Very, very, very few people in ufology have made a living or millions. Very, very few. Giorgio would be the biggest exception. I mean, he's got to be worth a multimillionaire. But people like Stephen Bassett, who I know, and Ron James, the documentary filmmaker, Accidental Truth, he's one of my best friends. He lost $250,000 on his film last year. He didn't get paid by his distributor. These are people that are blood, sweat, and tears, not for the money. It's for the truth. They want the truth to get out there. So there's a handful of rock star millionaire ufologies. There's 5 or 6 of them in the world. Linda Moulton Howe, maybe she made some money, probably, but very, very few. And most of these people are just doing whatever they can to get by, including myself. And I've lost thousands of dollars personally on the HDA because I've invested my own money to give birth to this because I believe in the cause. I've put out at least 15,000 of my own dollars. So this is it's sort of a labor of love, right? People like me and Bassett, we sit and we talk. God, if only we could make some. I know we're very highly visible people. We can't make $1 between us. Stephen, I go, Stephen, what are we doing wrong? You don't make money in this business. You do it for the love and you do it for the truth. And that's those of us who I'm friends with. That's what we're all trying to do together.
Yeah. So what's the event that you mentioned earlier on that's coming up at the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance?
September 22nd in the afternoon in Sherman Oaks, California, is going to be 2 men speaking. Well, first me, I'll introduce everyone. Thank you for coming. It's a cute little theater. We have a little theater that we can rent when we need to. It's a 90-person theater. And I will do the intro. And then Thomas Jane, the movie star, Thomas Jane is a movie star. He's writing a book. He's almost done with a book called A Human's Guide to Visiting Aliens. He's been writing this book for 8 years, and it's his research and his position on what human beings need to do when the aliens arrive, right? He gave this talk for 90 minutes at Contact in the Desert. I only saw the first 5 because I had other things to do. In fact, I introduced him, but I didn't see it. So I'm kind of doing this event for myself because I missed it. I want to see it. So he's going to do 90 minutes on how humans need to do when the aliens come. That's Thomas Jane. The guy's a movie star. I mean, he's a legitimate movie star. Then we take a little break, and then Ron James is going to do The Making of Accidental Truth, the documentary. He is good friends with Tim Burchett. I mean, they've become actual friends. He's friends with Travis Walton, Michio Kaku, the professor, Dolan, of course, Nick Pope. He's good, like literally friends with these guys. So he's going to discuss what he's learned through his adventures in Making Accidental Truth, the documentary. So each guy's going to do 90 minutes, and then Bassett will say a little closing, and then we're going to go out and get drunk and have drinks and hors d'oeuvres at work. So it'll be a cute little event. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, sounds like fun. Sounds like fun. So you've written a couple of books, or you've published a couple of books since we last spoke. I remember
since we last spoke, since we last spoke, I don't know that Stephen King ever pulled this off. I had two books that came out this year. One in May, one in June. In retrospect, I wouldn't have done it because it's hard to promote 2 at once. I would have waited more time. But anyway, in May, my third book came out. It's called My Paranormal Life, Supernatural Stories of a Hollywood Insider. Okay. It's this one. And it's kind of fun. It's a black and white, sci-fi cartoon cover. I really like that cover.
I like it.
Since the age of 5, I have had paranormal experiences from 5. That's the first one I remember until June this year when I saw my 4th UFO. So they've been happening to me, not every day, not every year, not every decade, but over the course of my life. Last summer I was bored and I just sat down and I'm like, well, I've seen a bunch of UFOs. So I wrote that down and I'm like, after my father died, he visited me in my bedroom several times as a ghost, which he did. And it was my father because I know it was my father. And then, 20 years ago, I lived with this woman down the street here in Beverly Hills, where I am now. And we had a poltergeist for months. And my family, after a few months, doors were slamming, things were breaking, things were flying around the house. And after like a couple of months, my family, we sat down, we did a Ouija board. This is true, man. We did a Ouija board, and I said to the Ouija board, is there a ghost in my house? And it's called a planchette, that plastic thing. Is there a ghost in this house? Yes. Okay, yes. Ghost, what's your name? And it wrote Joseph. I go, hello, Joseph. My name is Dan. I go, where are you from? This is a killer, man. Where are you from? Syria. Okay. My father's father, Joseph, was from Syria. Okay. How's that? Wow. I'm like, are you Grandpa Joe? Yes. This is the year 2003. My Grandpa Joe died in 1967. Okay. That's pretty good. Wow. That's pretty good. I hadn't seen the guy since I was 11. This is the year 2003. I go, Grandpa Joe, what are you doing in my house? And he wrote, Jordan. Jordan is my son. I go, what do you want? Jordan is there. There's me, my daughter, my son, and my girlfriend. I go, what do you want with Jordan? He goes, to teach. My grandfather taught Hebrew. He was a Hebrew teacher. He was an Orthodox candidate, Jewish candidate. He never met my son. He wanted to teach my son Hebrew, right? So we're crying. And I'm like, Grandpa Joe, I can't, I'm like, I love this guy. He died when I was 11. I remember that day. I couldn't believe he died. So I said, Grandpa Joe, I go, you're scaring us, man. I go, I love you, but you're scaring us. You need to leave my house. I really did. I said, please, with respect, you need to leave my house. And the thing went, yes. Okay. And then Jimmy, then it stopped. And that was it. Stopped. Wow. Never again. I lived there for another year. Nothing, zero. Nothing at all happened after that. Well, if that wasn't my Grandpa Joe, it was a hell of a good It was a hell of a good imposter. It was a really good
Jesus.
ghost imposter if that wasn't really him. I mean, who else could that have been, right?
Yeah.
And let me give you this story. This story is just unbelievable. I've remembered this story my whole life. I never even told anyone till last year. And when I told my daughter, she had a strong reaction. She was, Dad, you have to put that in your book. When I was 1961, I was 5 in suburban New Jersey, where I grew up. I had 2 little girlfriends that lived across the street. They were sisters. They were older than me. And they used to come knock on the door and ask my mother if we could play. My mother said, fine. So one day, summer day, I think it was, beautiful day. Me and these 2 little girls go out and we used to climb trees and we used to climb fences. That's what we did. And we played jump rope, I think. That's all I can remember. But we climbed things. They taught me how to climb a tree. So one day they said, let's go climb the billboard sign for the drugstore. Okay. A block from my parents' house and around the corner was a little mini mall with I'm going to say it had to be a 30-foot tall billboard sign. And inside the sign was a wooden skeleton lattice. So me and these 2 sisters went behind the sign and we're climbing up the wooden skeleton lattice, the beams. And I remember clearly, I could see them in my head. We're climbing up, and these 2 girls were higher than me, so they're laughing, giggling, and I'm climbing. I'm 5, maybe 6, but I'm pretty sure I was 5. So I'm climbing, and then I remember clearly at one point, for whatever reason, my hands slipped. Both hands slipped. I looked at my hands. They were off the beam. And I thought to myself, well, that's not good. I remember like, uh-oh. And then I'm on my back and my face is facing the sky. And honest to God, this is a true story. My face is facing the sky. I'm on my back. I remember falling in slow motion. It's the only way I can describe it to you. I was falling in slow motion, and these 2 girls are screaming, oh, Danny, Danny, right there above me. So I'm falling in slow motion, and then I have missing time. And this is true. I have missing time. I don't know if it's a minute or an hour or 2 hours. I have missing time. I wake up on a couch inside a stranger's home, 2 blocks from my mother's house, 2 blocks from the sign. No one is home. Okay. Now, how in the hell did I get there? How did I get there? Lying on the couch. I remember lying on the couch. I remember opening my eyes and thinking, am I alive? I remember thinking that. I sat up. I looked around the room. I said, hello, hello. Is anyone home? I remember saying that. No one was there. I get up. I turn to look, and this is true, man. As I remember it, there was a cryptid being at the front door, 6 or 7 foot tall, had to be. It was not a human being. It was a cryptid. It looked like, best I can describe it, white chocolate color, sort of milky, whitish, brownish color. The bottom half of this thing was either like a donkey's 2 legs and body or like a bull. It had 2 legs and the bottom half of an animal. The top half was an angel. But but on the shoulders of this thing, instead of wings, because I could tell instantly it had wings at one time, there were bony stumps. They were like bony protrusions, as though God took a hedge clippers and cut off this thing's wings. So there were no wings, but these bony stumps, because the way he was like a V, it looked like there had been wings.
Yeah.
And then his face, I remember it as like a bull, like a cow or a bull, that kind of thing. So I'm standing up to leave. I'm 5. I just got off the couch. I look at this. This thing turns his head over his right shoulder, looks at me, and he goes like this. He snorted at me. This thing snorted at me. I'm like, and I'm looking, I'm thinking,
That's
that
surreal.
thing he doesn't like me very. I remember thinking, he doesn't like me. He turns his head and then he leaves. Now, I don't know if he opened the door, if he dissipated, vanished. I don't know. But he left. I go outside. I look around. I see my parents had a pink house of all things. It's the only pink house in the block. So look, I see that. Where the hell? 2 blocks. I'm like, oh, there's mommy's house. So I'll come. That's it. That's the entirety of the story. But I have missing time, number 1. Number 2, when I woke up, I remember thinking, am I dead? And number 3, there's a cryptid there, man. Now, next week, do you know the name Yvonne Smith?
I don't.
Yvonne Smith? Yvonne Smith is a famous regression hypnotherapist
Okay.
for UFO ET abductees. That's how I met her. She's in my HDA group. I told her this story recently. She's going to hypnotize me next Saturday. I can't wait, man. For 3 hours, she's going to hypnotize me in her office. She lives here in LA. And we're going to try to figure out the missing time, what
Yeah.
happened,
Great
what
idea.
happened, and what that thing was. Now, I told my daughter last year, she said, Dad, that was a gargoyle. So I researched gargoyles. Gargoyles protect people and buildings within a limited radius of a neighborhood. I researched it, or I read it on Google, but that's what they do, right? They protect people, certain people, and certain buildings and structures within so that gargoyle apparently protected my neighborhood, I guess. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
he was the chapter is called My Gargoyle. It's the first chapter in that book. It's called My Gargoyle. So there you go. I know that wasn't human. Whatever the hell that thing was, wasn't human.
How strange. How strange. So are your it'd be fascinating to see what comes of that. Are you going to
Oh,
record it, at least audio, not necessarily to share,
I
but just to be able to listen back
I
to?
think that's excellent. I think she does that. I'll ask her. I believe she
Awesome.
does. I'll write that down. I think she does
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
that'd be fascinating. I know, I mean, it's a deeply personal thing, being hypnotized and that kind of vulnerability that goes along with it. But for me personally, I'd have to record it. I'd have to listen back to it. It'd be
I've
fascinating.
been hypnotized several times in a quest to find out about past lives.
Right.
I'm very interested in past lives, and I believe I've had some. Uh, and along the way, uh, well, first of all, when you're if you're truly hypnotized, you know exactly where you are. You're not going to ever say anything that you don't want to say. You're not going to tell somebody your deepest, darkest secret. It's not going to happen. But you're so relaxed, and it just say, okay, where are you now? What's happening? What do you see? And I don't know if it's your imagination or your past lives, but like one of them, I was a Roman soldier protecting the Colosseum. One of them, I was a cop in 1960s New York City, 1920s New York City. I was a cop in a cop uniform. One of them, I was an Amish farmer plowing my fields with my son riding next to me. You know,
Wow.
is it past lives or are you dreaming while you're awake? Whatever it is, I find it fascinating. I think it's
Yeah.
cool. I think everyone should do it at least once. I found it fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've had hypnosis, but it's been for like I did it maybe 18 years ago for to quit smoking, and it
Yeah.
worked. It did
Yeah,
work.
yeah, a lot of people. Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people do that. Try
Yeah.
it, man. Try it for past lives. Just
Yeah.
do it. I think everyone should do it once. What do you got? You have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
You're not going to say or do. You're not going to take your clothes and dance like a chicken. You're going to do what's if the person you're trusting your person. But Yvonne Smith, man, I last week we did a pre-interview on the computer. She goes, Dan, and I swear she said this. She goes, Dan, I've had thousands and thousands of people. I've never heard a story quite like yours. I go, Yvonne, that's the highest praise I could ever possibly get for my paranormal life, right? If Yvonne Smith is telling me, it would be like you read a little tune and Paul McCartney goes, God, that's a really good little tune.
Yeah.
She told me she goes, that's I've never heard a story. It's one of the most amazing stories. I go, Yvonne, are you serious? You telling me that? I go, what higher praise could I possibly want?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to try that. I mean, in the last year, I've had a UFO sighting of my own, first one ever. I've
Good.
had psychic reading, first one ever, and met some incredible people. But yeah, yeah, I'll try it. I think everyone should try it.
I've learned my third UFO sighting was in '08. And long story short is I saw a huge craft. I probably told you this last time
Yeah.
at the East Seti Ranch. I was with a girlfriend. It's a 3-day weekend there. And after the third night, huge black craft came with a green light underneath it and about maybe 200 people in the field at night. And this craft bathed us in this beautiful emerald green light. I probably told you this before. But this light from this craft. It was like Morse code. It was like light, 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 but it was silent. And I'm getting, and I still feel it in my heart, we're here, we love you, don't be afraid, everything's cool. Love one another, be kind to planet Earth, we have to go now. The whole thing was maybe 30 seconds. And then this craft took off. But since then, in '08, I've been so much more calm. This is all true, man. Calm, nicer. I'm a nicer person. I'm way more open-minded to new things. Really. It was almost like I don't know, that they hypnotized me, but whatever that green light was, it was like be kind to one another, love your fellow man. I became people like, Dan, what are you taking new antidepressants? I go, no, I'm just a nicer person all of a sudden. I couldn't even believe it because I was a little bit of a dick to some people. I'm so much nicer now. So some of these kind of off-world events, if you open your heart and you open your mind, I think it can embellish your life. I really
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. You do hear that quite consistently, this sort of telepathic message and positivity. It's almost exclusively positive. Like, there's a few people that have these kind of negative, more so experiences than
Yes,
messages.
right. I
But
agree, totally agree.
there's very much like a place where they are in their lives, and that's not in every case, but that's kind of a theme that I've noticed in speaking to some people, is they're in a certain place in their life at the time, and they have a negative experience when they have perhaps a sighting, or some kind of abduction experience. But other people, it is on the whole pretty positive,
That's
overwhelmingly, I
it.
would say.
I agree with you. I do. People I've heard that have had messages or downloads or anything, they were interesting or positive. But there are at least three female members of my HDA group that I'm good friends with who have been impregnated. They've been abducted repeatedly, impregnated, and then had their fetuses removed, and then years later met their child. There's three women that I could right off the cuff that I know that this happened to. And I'm like, oh, and they're like, Dan, it was not pleasant. This is not something I wanted to happen in my life. Then I have another good friend named Mark who lives in the Bay Area. He's had a relationship with Pleiadians. He's 60 years old since the age of 5. They've been taking him every few years since 5. And he says they're beautiful and they're warm and loving. He goes, the women are so beautiful. You cry when you look at them, literally cry. And they told him he needs to bring solar energy to a Native American Indians in the Southwest. And he has. And he's become a multimillionaire as a result. They gave him an implant. They gave him a download. This is true because I believe him. He's a good friend of mine. He said 10 years ago, he was on the craft. They said, Mark, your mission is to bring solar power to Native Americans. That's what we want you to do. They gave him in his brain a diagram of a solar, technology piece in his head. And they would bring this to American Indians. So they bring him back. He's down on Earth. He meets with engineers. They build this thing in his head. They build it. He brings it to Indians. He's brought power to tens of thousands of American Indians, and they love him. They think he's like a hero, right? And he's made $1 million in the process. He's 60 years old now, and he goes, Dan, they changed my life. And I go, Mark, that's one of the best stories about aliens that I could ever imagine. What could be nicer than that? There are good aliens. There are evil aliens. There are benevolent, just like humans. There's different races apparently. Oh, can we jump over to 5? Because
Yeah, let's do it.
5 is all about past lives. All right, so 5 just came out a month ago. It's my little baby. It's a novella. It's a short story. I'll tell you how that came about. First of all, it's my 5th book, so that's right off the bat. I walk 5 miles through my neighborhood here in LA. I walk 5 miles every other day. Last fall, I was walking my 5 miles one day, and the word five it came into my head, FIVE. I'm like, it's such a good word. That's a really good word. I really like that word. And then I realized if I wrote one more book, I'd have 5 books. I'm like, well, that's a good number to have. Then I'm thinking, if I had a character named 5, what would his real name be? That would be a nickname, clearly. What would be his real name? So I came up with Fievel. Fievel. Then I remembered this. 25 years ago, I've seen psychics for years. 25 years ago, I saw a very, very famous psychic here in Hollywood. He's a famous guy. And he's deaf. He passed away, but he was deaf. A lot of famous people used to go to him to see him. Very accurate. He would meet with you in this little barn. He wouldn't say anything to you. You just sit there and he would roll these coins or dice or whatever he would roll on his desk, and then he'd roll them. Then he'd put his head back, look at the ceiling, and his eyes would roll up in his head, right? And he'll tell you incredible things about your life. And everything he ever said to me or any of my friends or the girlfriend I had at the time, everything was exactly accurate. It was scary accurate. One of the things this guy, his name was Tom. One of the things he told me was, you know, you were a famous Hungarian actor in the 1870s in Europe. Okay. So then I drive home. I'm like, well, what do I do with that information? Okay, that's nice, right? That's what the guy told me. He's dead serious. So I'm walking Fievel, and then I'm like, wow, Fievel could be a famous Hungarian actor in 1870s Europe. It's because Fievel's a Hungarian name. So I'm like, well, I have that character. What does he do? Oh, he's an actor. Okay, but what makes him special? Now I'm going to tell you something that's super embarrassing, but true. Over the 30 years I've been hypnotized or psychics or palm readers, whoever I've seen, many of them have said to me, Dan, you were a serial killer in a past life. True story.
Wow. Imagine
Hard
getting
to it.
told that.
I've heard it from major people. Okay. I'm not proud of it. I don't know if it's true, but anyway, there you go. So I have Fievel, this character. He's an actor in 1870s Europe. And then I'm like, well, I guess he kills women. He's a famous actor, like on the stage by day, but then he kills women at night. He's a serial killer. I'm like, okay, that's a great story. So started that. Then I thought, no, wait a minute. I want to reincarnate him into the future, this guy. Because if I have past lives, this guy has to have lives in the future. It's kind of convoluted. Then I came, then I came up with this, man. I knew Bruce Springsteen in the early 70s. I worked with Bruce before he was famous at a couple of concerts when I was 16 years old. So one of my walks, I'm like, what if Bruce Springsteen was a serial killer and nobody knew it, right? Is that the crazy? He does these concerts for 100,000 people. Yeah, Bruce, everybody's crying, Bruce, right? And then he goes backstage and he's hugging and kissing all the fans, right? Then everyone's gone. He gets in his car, puts on like this cloak, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. And he gets in his car and he murders women. I'm like, what if Bruce Springsteen was a serial killer? So I moved my original character 100 years forward. So he's 1870s Hungary, 1970s United States. I have a kid named Billy Simon. He's a gifted, super handsome singer-songwriter. He gets discovered in Manhattan. He becomes the biggest pop star in the world. Every song he writes is a #1 hit. But he inherited the soul of that first guy. That first serial killer got reincarnated into him. So he sings and performs and everyone loves him, but he kills women. He can't help it. So that's the whole story. My mother actually liked it. And my mother never liked anything I've ever done in my life. She goes, this is brilliant. It's very graphic, but it's brilliant. I go, well, thanks, Mom. It only took 68 years, Mom, for you to give me one compliment before you died. Very sweet. So that's what Five is. Five, a novella. It just came out. People seem to like it. I'm hoping to pitch it as a little TV show somewhere, TV episode. It's a short story.
Sounds fun. Sounds fun. Unique. Very unique. Dan, I know your kids are growing up. What do they make of your shift from your old life of many, many decades to this new sort of paranormal UFO-y
Well,
just
my son has always thought I was bat-esque crazy. I mean, he never understood me, ever. My daughter and I are super close, and she thinks I'm like some kind of creative genius. I'm not bragging. I do think I'm some kind of creative genius, only in that I have the ability to think of creative things, but then make them happen,
yeah.
right? Like I've written 5 books and got them published. They're not self-published. These are real publishers. I created a business for 30 years. I've made millions and millions of dollars that came from a chandelier. Did I tell you the story about the chandelier?
I don't think you did. No.
Oh. All right. In my paranormal life is another chapter, right? I've been a Hollywood publicist for 40 years. Along the way, for 7 years, I worked for a very well-known Hollywood publicist. He was my boss. He had a big PR firm, and I hated this guy. He was very, very mean and unpleasant to me for 7 years. I brought him hundreds of thousands of dollars of my clients to him. And through his agency, I then got 10% of my money. He got 90% of my money and I got 10, right? For 7 years. That's not really fair.
No.
Anyway, so I'm working for this guy for 7 years. I turned 40. I turned 40. I'm dating this new woman and things seem to be changing in my life. So one day I'm at the Four Seasons Hotel in Beverly Hills down the street from my house with my boss who I hated. And we had these two new clients that he was trying to impress. So he's telling them how rich he is and what a genius he is and how great he is and they should hire him, right? And I'm literally there hating my life and wanting to be dead, right? I'm like, what am I doing here? I just turned 40. I'm working for this prick. I hate this guy, right? Okay, this is another man, and you could believe me or not, but I swear on my daughter, this is true. I'm sitting there, the chandelier at the Four Seasons Hotel in Beverly Hills, the chandelier above my head in the ceiling goes like this. Dan, I look, start your own business. I swear on my daughter. I go, what? Start your own business. And then it went away. I go like this. I stand up. My boss goes, what are you doing? I go, I have to leave. It's the greatest moment in the history of my career. The greatest moment of my career because I hated this guy's guts. I go, I have to leave in the middle of a meeting. I have to leave. I stand up. I go home. It was so great. I then call every one of my clients who at the time was paying him 90% and me 10. And I called every one of my 15 clients. And I said, if I did my own business, would you stay with me as a publicist? Every single one said, not only would we stay with you, one guy goes, Dan, if you went to Botswana, I'd go to Botswana with you. So now, after that night, I had been making 80 grand a year. Okay. At the end of that night, I'm up to $600,000 a year because the chandelier spoke to me. Okay. 3 months later, I have a multi-million-dollar business, 6 employees, a building in Hollywood, an office in New York. Changed my life. Chandelier. You explain that one to me, man, but that's in my paranormal life. God, an angel, my dead grandfather, a dead friend. I really don't know, but that chandelier, literally, it changed my life.
Yeah. Incredible.
And I love that
Wow.
story. That's one of my favorite. That's one of my favorite stories. It really is.
That's amazing. Just the turning point in your life of just massive, massive
Oh, it
change.
just changed. It was like it was like driving a little car with no gas to driving a Maserati overnight.
Yeah.
Everything,
Wow.
money, clients, women, suddenly women throwing themselves. I mean, famous people, Hollywood part. Unbelievable how that happened. This boss actually, after he found out that I started my own business, he was not happy. I gave him a lie. I said I had been hired by some other people. He said, good luck. And then it ran in the Hollywood trade papers that I had my own business. And my friend said, this is not what Dan Harary told me. And he's like going up and down, steam shooting out of his head. And I got my revenge,
Yeah.
After 7 years, I got my revenge.
Yeah, well, it's a life lesson for him, wasn't it? I suppose.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Treat people like that.
It was.
Yeah. Dan, I'm conscious of the time. It's been an absolute pleasure as always. What's
Thanks.
where for those listening, your podcast that you've so let's talk it through the books. Where would they find the books?
Okay, so Flirting with Fame is my Hollywood book. After They Came is my benevolent aliens book. My Paranormal Life is my book about my chandelier speaking to me and the gargoyle that saved my life. And Five is my little short story about a serial killer that gets reincarnated. They're all on Amazon, all four. Dan Harary, Harary. Also, a lot more books, my bio, and a lot of fun photos of me with Steven Spielberg and Jerry Seinfeld and Alice Cooper and Hugh Hefner and Mickey Dolenz and Margaret and Kirk Douglas. I mean, there's millions of them. They're all on my website. So danharary.author.com, danharary.author.com is a lot about that. My PR business, if you want to find me, I'm not looking for PR clients, so forget that one. Hollywood Disclosure Alliance.org, HollywoodDisclosureAlliance.org. We just added a donate button. We are a 501c3. We run on donation. And we just added a join button, which I should have done on day one. And it tells you how you could go about becoming a member. We'd love to hear. We have people all over the world. We'll have 200 members by Christmas. And if you're interested, HollywoodDisclosureAlliance.org, read about us. You can see what we do. We're blending UFO and ET researchers with Hollywood producers and writers to sort of cross-pollinate and share stories. My goal is to help nurture the next era of movies, TV shows, and documentaries based on, and here's what gets funny, based on real life paranormal experiences of real life people like me. I've had quite a few. A lot of my friends have quite a few. You need to have more, my friend. You need to get out there, and because you're a little bit behind. You need to go see some more UFOs, and you got to get hypnotized, man. It's amazing what might come out. You never know what might come out.
Definitely. Well, I've got I'm going to spend some time in my garden now. I mean, it's midnight, called 15 minutes past midnight now, but I was sent a digital telescope. It's amazing to try out. And so it's such a cool bit of kit, but I'm going to kind of review it, an honest review, but I'm going to go out in the garden after this and just stand there for sort of half an hour, film, and it picks up on anything that happens to move in the sky, but also just spend a bit of time there. So that's my new routine, is to just spend at least 10 minutes in the garden before bed, just looking up whilst
That's very cool. I can embellish what you just said, okay? The last night of Contact in the Desert in June, 2 months ago, there was a CE5 event that I went to, and I'd heard about them. I'd seen documentaries. I never went to one. I went to one. Long story short is 200 people, hour and a half, we're looking up, nothing's happening. The leader of this group, here's what you might want to do, Jimmy, when you're looking in the sky. It's just like almost like meditation. But this guy, we had a microphone, and he says, Space Brothers, like he's saying out loud, Space Brothers, we love you. We're here. We're open-hearted and open-minded. We want to meet you. We would do anything to meet you. We would do anything to talk to you. We know you're there. We love you so much. Please show yourselves. Give us a sign. Come land. I mean, it's like for an hour and a half, this guy's doing this, right? And I'm thinking, you can't summon an alien. I mean, I'm just really honest to God. I'm thinking, because we're all looking up, you can't summon an alien like this. And I swear to you, at 90 minutes, he goes, okay, now let's just everyone have thoughts. Just put your thoughts out there. Put your thoughts. I'm thinking I got to get up early tomorrow morning because I looked at my watch, and I swear there was a boom and a huge puff of smoke and a beautiful vanilla white and gold V UFO. It just shot out of nowhere, out of a portal in the sky. I swear to God, out of a hole in the sky, it just shot right above us, floating over us. Underneath it, it had octopus suction pods that were pulsating.
Wow.
Three, it was a V, so 3 and 3. And they were translucent, lit up, and they looked like heartbeats. They were like boom, 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 boom. And I saw it clear as I'm looking at you. And I said to myself, whatever that thing is, it's alive. That's a UFO that is part living entity. So anyway, I was going to say, go in your garden, right? Just when you look out, you don't have to say Space Brothers, but something like this. And this might work. I'd love to meet you. I know you're there because they communicate apparently. I saw it. It happened. I couldn't believe in a million years that a CE5 would work, and it did. It happened right in front, and I'm still amazed. But I'd love to meet you. Please show yourselves. Give me a sign. Flash once if yes, two if maybe it'll help you. Maybe it will. I have friends that do that, and it actually does work for them.
I'll give it a go and I'll report back. Thanks,
And
Dan.
I'll report back after Yvonne Smith hypnotizes me.
Yeah,
All
let me
right?
know.
I will.
I'm fascinated to know. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Dan. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. So
All
take
right.
care of yourself, Dan. Speak
You
soon.
too. Thanks. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.